OBR wrong?
No, the OBR aren't wrong. They have factored in the things that we have already announced. But of course, we've got more to do on growing our economy. That's why we've already published a green paper on our model.
Despite the fact that the Labour Party continues to spoil its reputation, they continue to give interviews and behave as if nothing had happened and that their deception had not been revealed. In her last interview, Rachel Reeves was once again on a brazen lie and was severely criticised. As always, she tries to explain her actions in a confusing way, but it looks absolutely ridiculous. It looks like she's really picked up on Starmer's style of answers. In today's video, we will analyze her speech in detail and discuss the latest developments in the country. Let's get started.
Chancellor, I want to start with what you said to the country back on June the 11th. Here's you.
I don't need to become Chancellor to know what a mess the government have made of public finances, of public services, and the fact that the tax burden is at its highest level in 70 years. We don't need higher taxes. What we need is growth. I don't want to, and I have no plans to increase any taxes beyond those which we have already set out.
They promised with such confidence that taxes would not rise, but we believed them and hoped for the best. But alas, they deceived us, betraying our hopes and trust. How can promises be broken so easily? It's just unsettling.
Now, you specifically said you already knew everything you needed to know, yet on Wednesday you raised taxes by £40 billion. Why would a reasonable person believe a single word that you say in the next 15 minutes and that you'll stick to it?
I was wrong on the 11th of June. I didn't know everything, because when I arrived at the Treasury on the 5th of July, so just under a month after I said those words, I was taken into a room by the senior officials at the Treasury, and they set out the huge black hole in the public finances.
I don't believe she wasn't aware of a serious budget shortfall. Their desire to win this election has completely overshadowed moral principles and honesty.
Let me break that down. The inheritance that we faced on the 5th of July was a £22 billion black hole between the commitments the previous government had made and the revenue they had coming in. We published on Wednesday, alongside the budget, the hundreds of line-by-line accounts of how that £22 billion is made up. In addition to that, there was the unfunded compensation claims that we need to pay for the victims of infected blood and the Post Office Horizon scandal. And then the third thing is that the previous government hadn't done a spending review since 2021. And so the outlook for public services, particularly our NHS and schools, would mean big cuts to public spending, and we would not be able to get those waiting lists.
I am convinced that all the money they will collect from our taxes will disappear in the same way as it happened with the Conservatives. These people seem to be simply obsessed with the thirst for profit and do not care how it will affect us ordinary citizens. This is simply outrageous.
And so when I went into that budget last week, I had to put our public finances back on a firm trajectory, because we saw in the previous Parliament what happens when government loses control of the public finances. And the first commitment we made in our manifesto was to bring stability back to the economy, and that's what I did on Wednesday. OK,
but before we go on to that, let's just deal, frankly, with the arithmetic here. You say that they told you there's this black hole.
Yes.
By your own account, the difference between that was something like 9–10 billion.
Yes, they claim that there is no other way to improve the situation in the country. But why did they decide to impose a tax burden on the most vulnerable? It's just terrible. How can you treat those who are barely making ends meet so ruthlessly? This is not a solution, but a real tragedy for people who are already suffering.
40 billion is choices that you yourself made, and I want to come back to that. But let me just start ask you about the difference between before the election and after the election. For example, before the election, you voted for 2 separate cuts to national insurance rates. Now that you've seen those numbers, was that a mistake?
Well, they were sold on a false premise, the premise being that the money was available. The money clearly wasn't.
It seems to me that the Labour Party has its own unique style and image which they so persistently support. First of all, this is a constant change of opinion every 1 second and a cunning that is simply off the scale.
At the time, you gave
Yes.
them hell over it. You said you shouldn't do this. You still voted for it.
No, I didn't. I supported those cuts to national insurance because they were costed and funded. But now what we find out after the election is that the numbers didn't add up because the government hadn't revealed to the Office of Budget Responsibility or Parliament the gap between the commitments they were making and the money they had coming in. So those cuts to national insurance were on a false premise. Now,
How brazenly she lies. It looks like she learned this art from Starmer.
that's why we've already published a green paper on our modern industrial strategy. It's why we are reviewing the planning system to get Britain building again. It's why in my first week I announced a review of the pension system to unlock long-term patient capital for businesses. I'm determined to grow the economy.
Are you
at
disappointed
faster
by
rates
those
than that.
figures?
I'm not satisfied with those numbers. I want economic growth to be stronger and faster, and I want it to be felt by people all around the country. Just a couple of weeks ago, Trevor, we hosted, let me just make this point. A couple of weeks ago, we hosted our International Investment Summit, and businesses announced £63.5 billion of investment into the UK. After the budget, another company, Prologis, announced £500 million of investment into a biomedical science park. I want growth to be faster.
This is a vivid example of how disastrous the proposed budget is a real tragedy in all aspects.
You won't be delivering any, but let's have a look at what the OBR says, that actually growth is going to go up a bit for a couple of years, and then it's going to settle, 1.5%. Actually, you've already failed. There isn't going to be the growth that you promised.
Well, I'm not satisfied with those numbers. Those aren't the summit of my ambition, but we're less than 4 months
are the
into
OBR
this
wrong?
government. No, the OBR aren't wrong. They have factored in the things that we have already announced. But
How do you feel about this interview? Reformist Britain is exerting tremendous influence on the Conservative Party after shockingly low voter turnout in the last Tory party leadership election, in which Kemi Badenoch won. She received 53,806 votes, while her opponent Robert Jenrick received only 41,388. These elections went down in history as the most disastrous in terms of turnout and with a minimal gap between the candidates. This is a wake-up call. The number of Conservative Party voters has decreased by 23.6% since 2022, amounting to only 131,680 voters, compared with 172,437 previously. If Badenoch is unable to cope with this difficult task and does not inspire the party, discussion of the candidate selection process may become inevitable. In her election campaign, she promised to return the Conservatives to their lost values and review policies to create a new party platform in the coming months. This is really a critical moment for the party. A key task for Badenoch will be to restore support from Reform UK, which is rapidly gaining popularity. On the 3rd of November 2024, the number of members of this party exceeded 93,000 people. About 4 million voters chose Nigel Farage's party in the last election, and this had a significant impact on the Conservative vote. Farage called on Jenrick's supporters, disappointed with the results, to join him, stressing that the Tories had chosen Kemi Badenoch over Robert Jenrick. Despite the fact that bookmakers mainly bet on Badenoch, her support among deputies was in third place with the lowest result in the final vote, only 34.7%. A YouGov poll showed that more respondents considered Jenrick to be the best candidate for the post of Prime Minister compared to Badenoch, although the majority still hesitates. Moreover, 27% of respondents believed that Starmer would be a better choice for the post of Prime Minister compared to Badenoch. Only 19% of Britons are interested in the election of the leadership of the Conservative Party, and even among those who are going to vote for the Conservatives in 2024, 52% said they do not care who wins. This is a sad result. Moreover, 51% of respondents believe that the Tory party has nothing to do with the current political situation in the country. What do you think the future holds for the party? Share your opinion in the comments. See you.